And welcome into another edition of the College Hoop News Podcast. I am your host, Tony Patelis. If you can believe it, we are 5 days away from actual game action, so we are definitely ready to get the season underway here. So I thought it'd be a great idea to talk to today's guest, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, Jeff Goodman from Stadium. He's definitely one of my go-tos for all things college hoops. Jeff, how are you today?
Man, I'm good. 5 days, and I'm looking forward to Tuesday. I'll be in Indianapolis. And you got when the undercard is Michigan State, Kansas, it's going to be a good night.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time this afternoon. So we'll get right to it here. So before we get into some hoops, Jeff, I just wanted to ask you about your switch over to Stadium. How's the transition gone for you so far, and how much are you enjoying the new experience?
I love writing again. I'll tell you that much. I mean, that's been huge for me and a big reason why I made the move. And it's just, autonomy. As you get older, you start to understand it. And it's not like I didn't have some autonomy at ESPN. I think it was just that I didn't necessarily have people that completely trusted me to do what I had done in the past and what I was capable of doing. So I think that was part of it. And now I've got people that really trust me, let me kind of decide what's best for Stadium, for their college basketball coverage, for what I want to do. So again, it's doing things like this, chain of command series where I break down the best jobs in every league. It's doing sit downs I'll have them with Eric Musselman and Mark Few and Jim Calhoun here in the next week, and Book Richardson's wife. So doing some on camera stuff, doing writing, doing features, breaking news. It's been great the last week. Working the news again, and the Iona fight between the player and the assistant coach, and then the knucklehead CEO down in Florida who, verbally berated a player and calling him at 1:30 in the morning after I got back from covering the Celtics game, and then calling the player the next morning. It just, like, I feel like I'm covering college basketball again, and not just 5 schools or not just 10 schools, which, listen, in ESPN's defense, that's what sells ratings. Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, a few other schools. That's what rates. So that's what they concentrate on, and I get it. And there's some things I certainly miss about ESPN, the platform.
Right.
You watch ESPN, and I miss going on with Scott Van Pelt and Kevin Negande and some of my good friends and people that I met in Bristol. Most of my time there was terrific. The last year was very trying for me. And that's part of the reason I made the decision to leave, just because I felt like it was best for me at this stage of my career. Would I have done it 10 years ago when I was in my mid-30s? No, hell no. I wouldn't have been able to do it. But at this stage in my career, my wife and daughter, a key was honestly when my wife and daughter said to me, you were angry last year. You were not fun to be around last year. And I don't know if it started with going to Lithuania. I'm not sure if it continued with somebody at ESPN telling me not to, or multiple people telling me not to cover the FBI probe. I'm not sure what it was. But, again, I think sometimes you need a change. And this was a change that for me was the right move.
Great. Oh, thanks for sharing that with us. So I didn't want to ask you too much about the FBI trial. I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but with the trial wrapping up, I'm sure you've got plenty of feedback from people in the business, from coaches.
Yeah.
What's your overall thoughts? Where do you think things go from here, and where are you do you think we'll see any big changes in the sport coming up now?
No, I don't think we're going to see any big changes. I think the commission came up with their changes, and that's what we're going to get for the most part for the time being. They'll tinker with some other things and whatnot, but I feel like that commission was a complete joke in terms of, forming it, because it was a bunch of people that had no feel for what was going on. And you and I could have come up with those changes or something similar within an hour at lunch one day. So, not a big fan of how that whole process went down. But I think Mark Emmert, wanted somebody that would share his view on amateurism. And Condoleezza Rice certainly led that charge. And, all the power to her. She's very smart. But again, not overly plugged in when it comes to college basketball and the grassroots and everything like that. So where does it go from here? Where the NCAA wants it to go from here. Do they want to really investigate? How much do they want to wait for the third and final trial in late April, April 22nd, involving the 3 college basketball assistant coaches that were fired? I don't know. I mean, if I'm them, I feel like I have to. I feel the obligation to look into the allegations that came up within that first trial. Whether it's Kansas, whether it's Creighton, whether it's Arizona again with former assistant Joe Pasternak and Brian Bowen. Whatever it is, I feel like they owe it to college basketball to try to clean it up, to look into them. Zion Williamson.
Right.
Got to look into them. Now, will they? Will they go hard after Zion Williamson, who's a freshman at Duke right now? My guess is no. And by the time they finish anything up, Zion Williamson will be playing in the NBA and will be drafted by then. But, I feel like they should. Now, again, we just don't know with the NCAA because, they don't want Zion Williamson suspended or not playing. And I'm not saying he should be, but they don't want that. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, Tony.
Absolutely not. You're absolutely right. I know. I totally agree with you. So let's get into some other stuff here, Jeff. So I'm a big SEC guy.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite topics of late has been the SEC and how drastically improved it's been the last couple of years. I'm someone who thinks we can kind of start mentioning the conference when we're discussing the best conferences in college basketball. Obviously, the ACC and the Big 12 have been at the top for a while now. I think it takes a lot of change. It takes a lot to change someone's opinion on a conference. So I think your average fan still thinks this is a top-heavy league. It's all about Kentucky. But when you have so many programs on the rise like Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Mississippi State, this league is extremely deep. What are your thoughts on the league, and do you think we can see it start creeping into that conversation as one of the better conferences in college basketball?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the big thing was Mike Slive, who recently passed. I mean, he started this thing years ago. I remember after Billy Donovan won a couple national titles, he said to Billy Donovan, I need you to play a tougher non-conference schedule. And Billy actually called me. We talked about it shortly after, and he really didn't want to. But Mike Slive kind of fought everybody on it to play a tougher schedule. It started with Donovan. Obviously, you had Kentucky, and Kentucky's going to be Kentucky no matter what. But that was kind of the mantra that Slive started. And then Greg Shaheen came on as a consultant, and then it was not only, play a tougher schedule for these teams, and some of them were ready to do it, some weren't, but it was then hire better coaches.
Right.
Use the resources that you have, and a lot of it was football money, but use the resources that you have and go get some really good coaches, and look who they've gotten. I mean, it's kind of an interesting variety, right? You've got Avery Johnson, who couldn't get back into the NBA. You've got Ben Howland, who was run out of UCLA and kind of left for dead there and couldn't get a job right away. You've got, Bruce Pearl, who was run out of college basketball for a couple of years, and I worked with at ESPN. Then you got some good young guys. Mike White hadn't even been to the NCAA tournament. But at Florida, he's done a great job. Partially, he inherited some good players from Billy Donovan, but he can coach, he can recruit. You got Will Wade, who's certainly right now, again, another one of the schools that the NCAA's got to look into. But Will Wade has brought in a ton of talent. Conjo Martin, and Frank Martin's done a great job, obviously, getting them to the Final Four. Bryce Drew, look at the class that they brought in at Vandy. After when he took over, it was a mess. Georgia, we'll see what happens with Tom Crean. I'm not the biggest Tom Crean guy, but you know what? The guy's proven he can get some things done. And, I don't think he's as good a coach as Mark Fox was, X's and O's necessarily, but I think Tom Crean's a guy who's certainly proven some things. So the coaches, look at Rick Barnes. We haven't even talked about Rick Barnes. He was left for dead at Texas. Look at what he's done. So I think it's a coach thing more than anything else. They've really made a commitment to go hire some name coaches.
Right. The coaching tree is incredible in the SEC. So staying on the coaching in the coaching department here, I wanted to get your thoughts on a few of these offseason coaching hires. And the main one I wanted your thoughts on was Penny Hardaway at Memphis. The program really just hasn't been the same, obviously, since John Calipari left for Kentucky. Feels like the Hardaway hire has kind of re-energized the fan base here. Seems like the perfect guy for that job. What are your thoughts on his hire? And do you think he'll have Memphis back in kind of that national spotlight sometime soon?
when his name was first brought up a couple of years ago before they hired Tubby, I was like, that's crap. Like, you can't hire Penny Hardaway, another former NBA guy who's got $100 million in his pocket and his bank account. Like, what are you thinking? But then the more I saw Penny on the recruiting trail, coaching these kids, AAU, being involved, coaching them in high school, I'm like, all right, you know what? Like, maybe this guy works harder than I think. Maybe he's going to grind it a little bit, and he loves the recruiting. And, part of it was obviously he has the relationship with these kids because he did coach them in AAU and in high school. So it's a little bit different than when you just hire some former NBA guy. Rutgers hires Eddie Jordan, right? Like, there's no connection. Eddie Jordan had no clue what he was doing. Penny knew the AAU scene. He knew the high school scene. He knew the Memphis high school scene. And that's key. That's a big reason why they got DJ Jeffries, a big reason why they're in there deep for the number one player in the country, James Wiseman, who he coached. So I like it now. I mean, I like it because Memphis is relevant again. And, can he coach? I don't know yet. But yeah, I don't. But honestly, listen, I'd rather have a guy who can't coach but's got a ton of talent than somebody who can really coach but's got no talent.
Yep.
You can't win without talent.
Of course. The other two I wanted to ask you about is Chris Mack at Louisville, Dan Hurley at UConn. Seems like both these programs kind of couldn't have done better. Talk about a little bit about those hires and how those guys fit well into the programs.
Yeah, I think the perfect fit. I mean, don't you? When they were both hired, Tony, didn't you just look at it and say, like, these are the two no-brainers of the offseason?
Exactly. I thought Chris Mack was the perfect spot for Louisville. Perfect coach. Perfect. His wife's from there. He wants to be there.
He gives them some energy, a clean slate, along with the athletic director who hired him. And he's done a great job recruiting, which is kind of funny because a year ago at this time, right around, at Xavier, they were striking out on every recruit they were trying to get. Like, everybody. It was amazing. They couldn't get a guy they wanted. And Chris Mack was really frustrated. And now he goes to Louisville, and he's killing it. Maybe not getting the top 25 kids, but I don't think that's the way you have to do it at Louisville, number one. And it's not the way that he could do it right now with still the negative recruiting around the program and what could still happen in the wake of all the Pitino, all the drama that had happened over the last few years, especially now with the FBI deal and Brian Bowen. So you couldn't have asked for a better start recruiting wise than they've had at Louisville. So that was a great one. And, Dan Hurley, I love it. And I mean, again, I love it because I think he's like the opposite of Kevin Ollie, or the opposite of how Kevin Ollie had been recently, which was not really getting after it in the recruiting trail, not a great X's and O's coach. Obviously those who defend him will say he won a national title. And I'll say, you're right. He did. He won a national title. With Jim Calhoun's players, or a lot of them, Shabazz Napier, it's just one of those things that honestly just like it worked. And, but I don't think Kevin Ollie was a great coach. I think he's a really good person. But I think it was the right move to make with bringing in Hurley, who's just he's just a blue collar like grinder. He's just a grinder. And he's done this before at St. Benedict's prep school from nothing, at Wagner from nothing, at Rhode Island from nothing, and UConn. If Tariq Gilbert can stay healthy this year, which is a huge if, coming off 3 shoulder surgeries, but if he could somehow stay healthy, and you go Tariq and Jalen Adams, and Josh Carlton can come along, and Eric Cobb can stay out of trouble, like, it's not crazy to think that, like, UConn, because Hurley can really coach, could they get top couple in the league? I mean, the league stinks this year. It stinks, the A's.
It does.
Do you think, I mean, I'm not betting on them. If you're saying to me, like, hey, who are you betting on to win the AAC? I'm going to say, like, Houston or Cincy or something like that. But I will say, if everything went perfect and Tariq Gilbert is what he was coming out of high school, health-wise, and Jalen Adams is what he could be. If everybody plays, I guess, at their peak and they don't have any injuries, and already, though, you got Jalen Adams who's suspended and Sid Wilson who's suspended. So you've already got issues. So it leads me to believe this is going to be a long year in store. It's just my gut.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, so you said you're going to be sitting down with the next coach soon. I'm going to ask you about Eric Musselman. You know, the job that he's done at Nevada the last few years has really been incredible. When you talk about building a roster via so many different avenues, especially the way of the transfer, now they look like a legit top 5-10 team. Talk a little bit about what he's done at the school and what are you expecting from Nevada this season?
Yeah, this may be the biggest surprise. Like if you had said 3 years ago, like Nevada's going to be a top 10 preseason team, like everybody would
No
have been
way.
like, yeah, no, it's like winning the lottery. I mean, seriously. I mean, if you'd even said like Eric Musselman would be the head coach at Nevada like 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, he was basically like run out of the NBA. Then he was an assistant under Herb Sendek at Arizona State, left there to be an assistant for Johnny Jones at LSU, gets a job at Nevada. And we know Nevada's a pretty good mid-major job, but they just hadn't done anything under David Carter. So everybody kind of just gave up on him and didn't think too much about him. And, you know, he comes in and just goes the Freddie Hoiberg approach, right? I mean, that's what he did ultimately. He just said, like, all right, I'm going to load up on, you know, on transfers, and took the Martin twins. That was the big one, obviously. I mean, they're at NC State and they're playing. I talked to both of them about it. They're playing. They're just not given the freedom under Mark Godfrey that they wanted. So they leave. Jordan Caroline, he gets from Southern Illinois. And that's the core, obviously, of what they have. But, you know, a key might be the kid Lindsey Drew this year. He might be the key for them. He was hurt last year. Musselman told me that, you know, they're not going to make a decision on him and whether he'll come back until probably like December, you know, and it's up to him. But he's their point guard that they really need. Like if they have him too, he's just that pass first point guard who can really make people better around him. And if you add him to this group, they really could make a Final Four run, I think. I mean, they could do it without him. Certainly, I think they're going to run the Mountain West for the most part. You know, they bring in, listen, anytime you have the team he had, and then you're bringing a McDonald's All-American at Nevada, Jordan Brown, and a grad transfer, Trey Porter, who's super talented from ODU, another big. They're going to be powerful in the Mountain West, and people are going to be talking about them because as long as they do what they need to do in the non-conference, they're going to be in the top 10 all year.
Right. They almost have too many guys
Yes.
in a way. I'm going to be very interested to see how Musselman handles the minutes for everybody. That's going to be one of the.
You know what he told me, Tony? You know what he told me? He doesn't care. He's like, if they don't deserve to play, I'll play 7 guys again.
Right. I know. He's that type of guy.
Yep. Doesn't care. I thought about that too. And I was like, before I talked to him, I was like, how are you going to do this? You got like 10 dudes, you know, all these transfers. But, you know, some of the transfers they brought over, let's face it, like, you know, the kid Trayshawn Thurman was at Omaha. Corey Henson was at Wagner. Jazz Johnson was at Portland. Got a kid from Bryant. So, like, are these guys that they probably do think they're going to play 25 minutes a game, but ultimately, are they even good enough to play at that level and be impact players, or are they more of 10, 12, 15-minute a game guys?
Right. Yeah, well, I can't wait to find out. We're going to find out pretty quickly, too. So another hot topic, Jeff, that's always on college basketball fans' minds, obviously with the NCAA Tournament Committee, and now they're dumping the RPI. They're going to this new net ranking system. Do you think this new way of doing things is going to make a huge difference, or is this kind of just more of a small step in the right direction?
I don't know. Nobody knows exactly how they're coming up with the net. You know, we know some of the factors, but we don't know. Nobody knows exactly how they're doing it. So I think until we see how it works through year one and how accurate it is compared to what we all think it should be, I don't know if we can tell. I mean, I'm glad the RPI is gone. I mean, that's obviously just getting rid of that. You know, you and I could have come up with something that was more accurate than the RPI, just throwing darts. I mean, literally, it's got a dartboard and threw, you know, 128 teams up there or whatever and hit 68 of them. We could have come up with something more accurate than that. But, I think time will tell. Hopefully it'll improve. I think it will. Listen, I trust in Dan Gavitt. I do. I trust Dan Gavitt. I think he's a really smart guy who's got the best interests of college basketball at heart. I wish they gave him more juice. I wish they gave him more, you know, Coach K said it last week at the ACC, and he said it to me a year ago. He's like, we need a commissioner. We need a czar. Jim Calhoun reiterated that to me yesterday when I saw him. I think that's a step. Like we need to either empower Dan Gavitt or get somebody else in, that can really run college basketball and has the power. But I don't think Mark Emmert really wants to do that. Otherwise, he already would have done it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't think he does either. So let's finish up here off with some on the court stuff, Jeff, and get some picks. Who's a team do you think that's kind of flying under the radar here and maybe could be this year's Ohio State or Tennessee? Who's somebody you're looking at?
Does Notre Dame count?
Sure.
I mean, they're really in nobody's top 25.
Nobody's. I haven't seen them in anybody's.
Right. I mean, so I'll go with Notre Dame. I mean, like, how can you not trust in Mike Brey? Like, seriously, like, if there's somebody you should trust in college basketball, isn't it Mike Brey?
It is. It is. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in the country.
He's tremendous. And I know, like, listen, everybody will say, well, look at what they lost last year. You lose Matt Farrell and Bonzi Colson and, two stuff. But doesn't this happen every year? Don't we say this almost every year with Mike Brey? And, like, how is he going to replace Pat Connaughton and Atkins and Grant? And, I mean, just every year they lose guys. I trust in him. I think they've got enough there. Pfluger and Gibbs and Juwan Durham is healthy now and transferred in, and he should help. And this kid, Nate Lisuski, is a hell of a shooter, one of the top shooters in the country. As a freshman, DJ Harvey's healthier. I don't know. I'm betting on Mike Brey. I'm just betting on Mike Brey, period.
Yeah, me too. So we had a Cinderella last year in Loyola Chicago make it all the way to the Final Four. Do you see another maybe mid-major this year capable of making a run like that, maybe outside of Nevada?
Yeah, I mean, you always see it because of the way college basketball is now. Like, if you get old, you have a shot. I mean, like, Buffalo comes to mind, I guess. Yeah. They'd be the first one that comes to mind for me. I mean, I just think they've got a lot there and they've done it. That's the one thing with Nate Oates is, like, they've established a culture there of winning and at Buffalo. And I never would have thought that was the case, but, Bobby Hurley comes in and starts it, and the job goes to Nate Oates, and he's been tremendous since taking over the job. But, they've got everything back for the most part. I think they can really run the MAC, and then it's just kind of luck. I mean, it really is like Loyola Chicago. You got to get lucky. I mean, you really do got to get lucky. So I think Buffalo's like that one true mid-major that I could see, if like Harvard gets healthy, they could do it too, but they got to get their two top players. I mean, Seth Towns, those guys haven't played yet.
Yeah. I think Buffalo's a great pick. I think look what they did to Arizona in the NCAA tournament last year. I think that probably opened up everybody's eyes. So let's jump around to all the big conferences real quick before I let you go, Jeff, to kind of get your picks to win each conference here. Who do you like in the ACC this year, and maybe who's a team? You mentioned Notre Dame, maybe a sleeper team. Who do you think takes the ACC this season?
Virginia. Don't they pretty much take it every year under Tony Bennett, the regular season at least?
It's all about the postseason with the Who's, but they'll probably win 30 games to win the conference again.
I'm taking them to go to the Final Four again. I am. I am. I'm going to take them to go to the Final Four. I was just so blown away at ACC Media Day by Kyle Guy and his maturity and Tony Bennett. And obviously we know Tony Bennett. Like, that doesn't surprise us. But Kyle was beyond good and really impressive and I think getting Braxton Key eligible, with that waiver is going to be huge for them. So, they got a great perimeter. They got a first-round pick in DeAndre Hunter. So, and they got one of the best coaches in the country in Tony Bennett. So I will take Virginia to win the ACC.
All right, SEC, who you got?
Kentucky. I got Kentucky winning it all, period, everything.
Okay.
And I think they'll be the best team in the SEC. They'll have some lumps here and there because they're obviously they're young, but they got some older, Reed Travis was, to me, the difference between putting them over the top for me picking them to win it all.
Yeah, me too. Bringing in a grad transfer, a senior like that, just huge. Big Ten, who are you going with in the Big Ten? This is pretty much a wide open conference, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I agree. I think there's less disparity, from the top, Michigan State down, than there's been in a while. And there's a lot of teams kind of like in that middle ground, right? I mean, Minnesota brings back a bunch, and Nebraska brings back a bunch. Maryland could have been great if they had hurt her. I think Iowa is going to surprise some people. I have Indiana in my top 25, but how do you go against Tom Izzo without any distractions this year? Tom Izzo with a point guard and a big man, like a really good point guard who can shoot and pass, and a big man who looks really good physically right now. And I don't think they'll go toe to toe, he and Izzo, just because that's how their relationship is. But I think Nick Ward's not going to be complaining as much because he's going to be out in the court. As long as he doesn't get in foul trouble, he's going to be out in the court as much as humanly possible.
Right. Do you think, real quick, Jeff, do you think Xavier Tillman takes a big step up? I can hear.
I think Tillman is a guy that's going to step it up and take that jump because, frankly, Michigan State's not what they've been, not what they were a year ago. You lose Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson Jr., and there's going to be more opportunity. And they've got a good recruiting class that came in, but it's not like not a bunch of guys that you're going to say are like major impact guys. So I think Tillman will help, but I think it's going to be Winston and Ward are going to be your main two guys.
Hey everybody, sorry about the connection there. We had to shut down the podcast at the end of our discussion because of some issues with Google Hangouts. So just wanted to let everybody know that and say thank you for listening. I appreciate Jeff for coming on and talking to me this afternoon. We will be back tomorrow with some more episodes. I will announce those on Twitter a little later, but thank you for listening. This is Tony Patelis. This is the College Hoop News Podcast. Thank you so much.